Greetings, everyone who have tuned in. I certainly appreciate those of you who are interested in what are some of our rights when protesting. I appreciate Kais for reaching out to me and asking me to help to facilitate this discussion. My name is Elizer Darris. I work for the ACLU of Minnesota. I coordinate our Smart Justice campaign. I also coordinate our field activities. And so when we're door knocking, when we're lit dropping, when we're phone banking, I help to coordinate how those activities are going to look. Some of you may know me from being involved in the political space. I work for a number of campaigns, again, door knocking, canvassing, helping to coordinate campaigns. And so that's a space that I feel very comfortable in. And you all can even ask me a few questions based off of that as well. In this particular discussion, I'm getting ready to share my screen. But in this particular discussion, I'm just going to give you an overview of what your rights are while protesting, what to expect, what's not appropriate coming from the authorities, and when those not appropriate things happen, what some of your areas of redress are. So I'm going to share my screen now and let you all see and document. So this is a document that we created at ACLU. You are attending a protest. So what are your rights? So the first and foremost, you need to know that the right to protest, the right to peacefully assemble, is one of the most important rights, one of the most sacred rights, one of the most protected rights that you have. I'll allow us to just read the definition coming out of the U.S. Constitution under the First Amendment. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress. That is a fundamental right. That is a sacred right enshrined in the Constitution, fully, wholly, and protected by the Constitution. It is how this nation, in fact, was founded. Well, one of the ways in which this nation was founded. And so it's a fundamental right. It's actually one of the most protected, one of the most litigated rights. And so your rights are strongest in public forums like streets, sidewalks, and in front of government buildings, as long as you're not blocking access or interfering with operations. And so what that means is you have a right to go out, organize an impromptu protest, right? As long as they can't say that you are shutting down, the highway, for instance, or as long as they can't say that you are interfering with the operations that of the city or the operations of wherever the locality is that you have a right to peacefully assemble, and they cannot stop you. You can align 2,000 people up and down the entirety of the sidewalk. That is public property, and you have the absolute and unmitigated right to do that. The government may not restrict your speech on private property if you have the permission and the consent of the property owner. They can't stop that. So if the owner of the property, let's say it is Mall of America, for instance, and they never would, but let's just say that they did, said that, you know what, we're private property, but people can come, they can assemble, they can protest, they can let their voices be heard. Well, if that's the case, law enforcement can't then come and say, you must leave this property. It's private property. The owners of those private properties have the right to say what the rules of operations are for their private property. So we're going to go on. Protesters and also counter-protesters, they have the same right to free speech, and the police have to treat each of the groups equally. So sometimes you might have seen, let's say you have a protest that is pro women's right to choose what to do with their body if and when they're making a determination to no longer go forth with a pregnancy. And so you might see a protest protecting that right that was enshrined upon them through Roe v. Wade. You might also see an entirely other group, equally as large, counter-protesting as well. And so both groups have the right to protest, even though this protest is a protest against their protest. And the police officers, their duty is to just allow for both. They might say that there has to be a space between both. They might say that there has to be a certain decorum between both, but they cannot stop a counter-protest from occurring just because another group is doing a protest. When lawfully present in any public space, it's your right to photograph or record anything that's in plain view, including the police officers. We had a case a few months ago in which a woman was video recording police officers. There was a number of officers. They had a car pulled over. They had a couple individuals detained. Some of them still had their firearms out, despite the fact that these individuals were fully detained. And the woman recording was saying, are you all going to just shoot and kill them? Like, you already have them. Why don't you put your guns away? Why don't you put your guns away? You already have them. Why don't you just put them in the car and take them away? Eventually, and she was probably almost a football field. I mean, she was so far away. Eventually, some of the officers made the long trek to come to where she was, and they placed her under arrest. Well, we took her case. We got that thrown out. The case was absolutely thrown out. The police department that did it was reprimanded, and we're not done yet seeking justice for this particular woman. So they cannot stop you from filming them in a public space, performing their duties. They can't stop you from taking photographs of federal buildings, none of that stuff. You can stand right on the sidewalk, right in front of that federal building. You can take as many pictures as you want. Anything that your eyes can see, that is within the eyes of the public. Therefore, it is open. It's within the domain of the public. You can record it. You can photograph it as well. There's not a need for you to have a permit in order to peacefully assemble on the sidewalks. Now, if you're going to an installation like, let's say, you wanted to have a rally inside of the Capitol, well, there may be a need for you to acquire a permit in order to have that rally inside of the Capitol. In Washington, D.C., there are permitting requirements as well. If you're going to be on the National Mall and you're going to organize a large-scale protest, you may have to get a permit for that as well. But if you decide that you want to go into Facebook and organize a protest, organize a rally, organize for people to peacefully assemble, you don't have to acquire a permit for that. You can have the people come, and as long as it is peaceful, and as long as it is not interfering per se with the orderly operations, they cannot stop you, and they will not stop you. And if there is an attempt to stop you, then your rights are being abridged. As someone who loves and appreciates their freedom, you should then follow up if your rights are abridged, and we'll talk about that as well in a moment. If you do not have a permit, police may ask you to move to a sidewalk to let others pass and for other safety reasons, but that's about it. They can say, hey, you all, can you just not block the road? Can you go on the sidewalk? And then, you can make a determination of whether or not to go on the sidewalk or not. You can maintain your protest the way that it is. If that's the case, then, they may ask you all to disperse. But if you make the determination that, okay, fine, we'll just go on the sidewalk, they can't stop that. So what if the police order protesters to disperse? So shutting down a protest through a dispersal order must be law enforcement's absolute last resort. And so the protest itself must have gotten, in their view, out of hand. People are being hurt, buildings are being destroyed, and things of this nature. If the protests have gotten to that level, then they could ask the protesters to disperse. But if it's not, and if it is peaceful, then you have the right to peacefully assemble. They cannot issue a disbursement order. Police may not disperse a protest unless there is clear danger of riot, disorder, interference with traffic, or other immediate threats of public safety. If the officers do issue a disbursement order, then they have to give you a reasonable amount of time to comply. So they can't say disperse and then suddenly just start sending flashbangs in and tear gas in, hitting people with rubber bullets, busting people upside their heads. All of that stuff is illegal, illicit conduct. All of that stuff hopefully is recorded. If that type of conduct does occur, get that type of conduct to the ACLU. We will look at it, and we will most likely file a lawsuit on your behalf. But back to the point, they have to give you fair opportunity to know where to disperse to. So what direction will they want you to go? Why you are dispersing? How much time you have to disperse before they begin escalating their force? If officers issue an order to disperse, they have to give a reasonable opportunity to comply, including a sufficient time and a clear exit path. Protesters must receive a clear and detailed notice of a dispersal order, including how much time they have to disperse and the consequences of failing to disperse, and again, what exit route to follow. All of these things must happen, and then they must also say something to the effect of, if you refuse to disperse, then you are going to be charged with, who knows, disorderly conduct or something of that nature. But all of this must be very clear. It must be very clearly articulated, because your right to protest is one of the most protected rights. It is one of the most bedrock and one of the most important rights of citizens within this particular country. If you want to take pictures or shoot video at a protest or at something that's happening not right at a protest, when you are lawfully present in any public space, you have a right to photograph anything that's in plain view. That includes federal buildings. And so law enforcement can only ask you to not perform those types of activities. It's this last paragraph. Those types of activities, if and when they can assert that you are interfering with law enforcement operation. What does that mean? If they are detaining someone and you get in between them physically and the person and put the camera in their face, then they can say that you are interfering with law enforcement operations. If you are physically attempt to intervene, then they can say you're no longer lawfully recording them. They could then say that this is an interference. But if you are, 10 feet away, recording, even saying things to the effect of, "Are you guys just going to kill them right on camera?" then all of that is protected activity. They cannot detain you. If they detain you, they are violating your rights. You have the right to record them. You have the right to challenge them. You have the right to talk to them. They cannot tell you that you can't talk to them. They cannot tell you that you cannot record them. They cannot tell you that you cannot film them. What if I am stopped or detained for recording? First and foremost, remain calm. They would be very excited. If they had an opportunity to pretend as though, you are resisting them, detaining them, and, probably try to break your camera, break your phone, break everything else, and then more of them are going to come. And so remain calm. Don't fight them. Police cannot detain you without reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed. And so you have to ask them, am I being detained? Like, be very clear. Am I being detained? And they have to say, yes, you're being detained. Why am I being detained? They have to articulate to you why you are being detained. There has to be a reason why you're being detained. If they cannot articulate it, then you then say, am I free to go? So, am I being detained? Why am I being detained? Am I free to go? Am I free to go? And if they say that you're free to go, walk away, right? But ask them, am I being detained? If they're giving you an order, ask them, am I being detained right now? Police officers may not confiscate or demand to view your photos or videos without a warrant, and they certainly must not, cannot delete any of your data, and that's under no circumstances can they do that. If they do that, they have certainly violated your laws. Please get in touch with the ACLU of Minnesota if and when that type of conduct or that type of activity has occurred. Your rights have been severely abridged, and in violating your rights, they have violated all of our rights. And so an activity like that cannot and will not be tolerated. We have to be able to protect people's rights, to hold law enforcement and government officials accountable. One of the primary ways that we're able to do that today is through video recording them. What if I believe my rights have been violated? Then please, please, please write down once you get to a space and a place in which you can just like process, write down everything. Look at badge numbers, look at patrol numbers, look to see which agency are we talking about. I know there was a lot of confusion when National Guard and when State Patrol and when the Sheriff's Department and when MPD, it was confusion as in terms of what agency are we dealing with. It's going to be very important that you identify what cross streets am I at and what agency am I dealing with. Is that Hennepin County or is that State Patrol? They're both going to be wearing brown, so it might not be really easily identifiable just on the onset, but it's really critical that you identify what agency am I dealing with. Get contact information for witnesses that was there and get their statements. Take photographs of your injuries. If they shot you in the face point blank range with one of the rubber bullets, please take as many pictures of your injuries as you can. If they scrape you, scratch you, if they damage your vehicle, if they slash your tires, please take pictures of those, record that information down. Once you have all the information down, you can file a written complaint with that agency's internal affairs division, and also contact whatever the civilian review board is for that, and also contact the ACLU. I'm gonna give another shout out for my organization as well. Also contact us as well. We also have a process, an intake process that we will put you all through in order to see if this is the kind of case that we would take. We don't take all cases, but you know, we certainly, because we have limited resources, but we certainly wade through the cases that we can. And once we decide to take a case, we try to come and deliver a sizable and significant punch on behalf of our clients. And what if I'm stopped by the police? You're not responsible for de-escalating the police, but you still want to reduce as best you can your risk potentially of being stopped. If that happens, stay calm. You know, I'm hoping that, you know, some of your compatriots are around, and I'm hoping that they are recording. If not, certainly stay calm. No need to argue, resist, or fight with them at that point. Again, ask them, am I free to leave? If the officer says yes, calmly walk away. If you're under arrest, you have the right to ask why. Otherwise, say you wish to remain silent and ask for a lawyer immediately. Don't sign anything. Don't say anything to them, especially about what's happening or what occurred without a lawyer being present. I can assure you, you will regret that. I can assure you, you will rue the day that you thought that you was just convincing him to let you go or her to let you go. But in reality, you are saying statements that they are later going to use against you in a court of law. So don't say anything. If they have made a determination to place you under arrest, you're not really going to talk your way out of that. As a matter of fact, you're only going to potentially say things that's going to make it more difficult to defend you later on. Don't say anything. Exercise that right to remain silent. You don't have to consent to a search of yourself or your belongings. If you explicitly consent, if you say, yes, you can search me, then you would have waived your right to have them not do that. And that's going to be upheld inside of court. And so when they say something to the effect of, can I search you? No, you cannot search me. No, I don't agree. I don't consent to a search, right? They may pat down your clothing if they suspect that you have a weapon. And then if they decide to place you under arrest, then they can search you lawfully and legally. But don't just give up your rights. Don't just, be like, sure, you can search me. No, you can't. No, I'm sorry. Am I free to leave? Am I free to leave? Be very clear. You don't have to be argumentative. Am I free to leave? Right? And then just walk away. It's really that simple. We don't have to be as argumentative and combative in those situations. I want you to survive. I want you to be able to record what occurred. And then we want you to be able to press an agenda so that we can come against those officers and get them up out of here. That is our duty, is to get these malactors out of here and to get these police officers who are misbehaving and mistreating us prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But in order for that to happen, we need you here. We need you to record. We need you to remember, and we need you to press them complaints forward. We need you to contact our organization, and we have to be present for one another and look out for each other's backs. Don't go to protest by yourself. Don't leave a protest by yourself. Please don't leave a protest by yourself. Go away in numbers, right, so that we can look out for each other's backs. At this time, I'm going to pause here. I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to open it up for Q&A. Kais, if you can help me with regard to how we're going to do the Q&A right now. I know we have a few minutes, so I'm going to open it up now. I try to leave us about 10 minutes for the Q&A.
Nice, nice. Okay, so since we got someone who's in this chat room right now, I'm going to allow them to speak. Terrence, do you want to ask your question that you posted in the chat?
I can do that, yeah. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I was wondering, when you say rights, do you mean like what's in the Constitution, the constitutional stuff, or do you mean like, because I know there's universal human rights too, and then there's also like legal rights, or I guess just more specifically, what do you mean by rights?
Yeah, and so what I had initially said was the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The First Amendment of the Constitution supersedes any state laws that would be created and supersede any federal legislation that would be passed as well. So the Constitution is the law of the land. It's the highest law of the land in terms of our country, right? And so the rights that I'm specifically speaking of are constitutional rights. Everything that I said reflects back to the Constitution, all of the case law, all of the citations that I was making in terms of how police are to interact with you, what you have a right to record and film. I wasn't necessarily talking about any particular state's law. I was talking about the U.S. Constitution and case law that has been generated from the United States Constitution, which is the law of the land of the United States of America.
All right. Is there anyone else on the call who would like to ask a question? And then we'll open it up to the Facebook, see who's on Facebook with questions. If you want to ask a question, just raise your hand. All right, I'm gonna go look on Facebook. I'm kind of in a pickle. Well, I got a question. So if you could kind of go over one more time what happens, what's your rights when when law enforcement engages protesters and they're using tear gas and stuff like that. What's all that? What should we be doing when that happens?
So you have a right for them to give disbursement orders. You have a right for them to clearly articulate your pathway to be able to exit from the area that they are about to engage in operations. And you have a right for a reasonable amount of time to exit. So for instance, they can't pull up, jump out, just start shooting out tear gas without giving disbursement orders, without giving clear paths to exit. If and when that type of activity is happening, then rights are being abridged. Unless there's a riot that's like already full on, they're not trying to now disperse a riot or disperse a group. That's a different situation than you already have like a current emergency, and then the rules of operation, the rules of engagement are different. But if you are assembling and if things are becoming a little disarrayed, let's say you are taking over a freeway, or even if a few people within the protest break glass, damage property, that still does not penetrate the presumption that this is a peaceful protest. And so you could even have some people within a protest do property damage, and that still wouldn't be enough to penetrate the presumption of a peaceful protest. That's a very heavy and strong presumption that you have, and it would take a lot to overcome that presumption. Once they make a determination that it is no longer a peaceful protest and they are going to issue a disbursement order, then you have a right for the information coming from them to be very clear and articulated in terms of how much time they're giving you, where to disperse, what the consequence is going to be. You have those rights.
All right, we got a question from Rachel.
But it can't just be, off of a whim. It can't just be based off of what we were seeing here in Minneapolis. That stuff that we were seeing are all in violation of people's constitutional rights. As a matter of fact, the ACLU, we have several lawsuits currently filed based off of what we have been seeing. And so what we've been seeing in Minneapolis are very clear examples of violations of people's constitutional rights as they are peacefully assembling. I mean, you're seeing people getting kicked in the face. You're seeing vans just driving up and people jumping out and shooting flashbangs and tear gas, and all of those you're seeing reporters on air, on film, being accosted, being maced, being arrested. All of these are in violation of people's rights to peacefully assemble. And the right of the press.
Rachel?
I appreciate this information. So my question is, are there any rights regarding bad acting protesters and the ability to turn them over to the police? So I've seen that happening a lot. So for the folk who are turning these bad actors over to the police, do they have any rights as far as with the police? Are the police obligated to arrest this individual or apprehend him? Or is there anything out there like that that can attest to those?
So if they are affecting a citizen's arrest?
Right, so if say, for example, Black peaceful protesters apprehending, these white bad actors, and turning them over to the police, say the bad actor, the police lets him go, for example. Is there any rights as far as they have to apprehend this individual if he's,
I mean, potentially, but again, the counter protester has as much a right as the protester. And so let's say this is a potential counter protester. I don't know. That person has as many rights to assemble and to voice their malcontent with what we're protesting as we have a right to protest. And so all of the protections that I said we have in terms of our rights to assemble and our rights to like voice ourselves, they have as well. And so, and all of the protections that are around us in terms of what they have to say, how they have to say it, and what presumptions we have, they have as well. And so they cannot just immediately affect an arrest on someone. They could ask questions. That person can say, I refuse to answer those questions. And then that person can say, am I free to leave? And unless and until they have a reasonable suspicion or they've seen something, then they probably should not affect an arrest. If that makes sense.
Yep, it makes sense. Thank you.
So you're saying like they
So what I'm saying is the so-called troublemakers and the protesters all have the same rights in the so it's not your protest, it is the protest, right? And so it might be people protesting the protest. It might be people in favor of the protest, right? But each side, so you might see Nazis might have gotten they might have gotten a permit to protest somewhere. And then you might see anti-fascists show up and be like, yo, no, y'all not doing none of that. So the Nazis might see one particular person who might be really loud saying, yo, y'all Nazis, y'all need to go home. They might grab that person up and bring that person over to the police and say, this person is being particularly disruptive. This person is being particularly aggressive. That protester has protections as well as the Nazis. Both sides have protections to be able to assemble as long as they're not destroying property.
Kasira has a question.
I know, I mean, you know, it's difficult stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, because you got protesters and counter protesters, but you know, if the rights for everyone have to be protected. You know, we even have to protect the rights of those people we can't stand and those people who are disgusting, right? And those people whose views are outrageous, because if we can't protect those, then you can't protect, you know, any of them, because now you're picking and choosing what rights of peaceful assembly you're protecting. And so, no, the Constitution in terms of peacefully assembling is strongest for those who are peacefully assembling.
Hi, thank you for that. I just have a quick question around some of the things I've been seeing going around about cops covering up their badge numbers and just the legality around that. Because I know some of, you know, the advice is to like take down as much information and badge numbers. But what is sort of, do you have any advice or protocol, or just if you can help inform us around, the legality of cops doing that?
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain about the legality of that. I would say just get as much. So those units are positioned there very intentionally, very strategically. And if we remember where it is that the issue had occurred, the cross streets and the location, then you would be able to at least get close to identifying what that unit was, right? And potentially having that bad actor identified. What I can say is, if you leave a message with Brother Kais, I will go back to our attorneys and I'll ask them specifically, can officers cover up their badge numbers? And if they're asked to identify themselves at a protest, are they required by law to identify themselves? They, you know, even if it's not necessarily by law, it might be by policy. So they might be breaking their departmental policy by not identifying themselves. And so let me go and get that information. I'll put that inside of the chat of this video once it goes, well, it's already on Facebook. But once, you know, you come back to Facebook, you'll see the answers to that question inside of the chat.
It'll be in the care package.
It'd be in the care package, but I'll also put it inside of the chat for this video.
Thank you.
There's a question out of Facebook about, is the PowerPoint that you showed, is that available online, or is that going to be?
It is.
Okay.
It's so you'll see people with my shirt on. going through various different rallies, and we're passing out that piece of paper to everybody so they can know what their rights are during protests.
Nice, nice.
So there probably should be like thousands of those distributed right now. But you can also email me. I'll send you the PDF, and you can print out as many of those as you want as well. I'm sorry, Brother Kais. I got a dang staff meeting I got to get to. I hate that I got to run.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. We all appreciate you giving out all that free game. You know,
I'm going to say all power to the people. I'm going to say get out here, storm these grounds. We got to keep this energy raised up. They said that this has been the largest protest in world history, right? Y'all did that. You know what I'm saying? It's our job to make sure that y'all are all protected. You know, while y'all out here putting y'all lives on the line, pushing this agenda, driving this change. They've never seen this type of structural, strategic thinking on behalf of us as organizers, activists, protesters. And so I just want to like really raise up, lift up and say, man, y'all out here getting it. And it's our job to make sure we got y'all back while y'all out here getting it. And so we own it too. If and when any of those instances are occurring, please get at the ACLU of Minnesota. That's why we exist. Why we have already filed a number of lawsuits. And we're going to file a number of more lawsuits, and we're going to win those because that's what we do.
Gratitude. Thanks for spending time with us. For those who registered, you'll be getting a digital care package.
All right, y'all be well.
Peace.